Hello and welcome to my FlossTube channel. I'm Jean Farish and I am so glad that you are here with me today. I don't think I say thank you often enough that you are one of the people that I stay connected with through this crazy thing called FlossTube. So in the last couple of weeks, I have been busy with the 3 R's, maybe 4 R's. Let's see, recovery, rest, reading, and regrouping. Although this second surgery was minor compared to the one I had last summer, it really set me back more than I expected, and I just decided that it needed to be kind to myself. But the good news is I spent a lot of that time really thinking through what I want to do in the coming months and years, and I've come up with some really good ideas that I can't wait to share with you. Did manage to read about 10 books. And if you like the sort of murder mysteries with a strong female character, then find the Kay Scarpetta series. She's the chief medical examiner for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the books have been pretty good. So anyway, that's how I've been spending my couple of weeks, and also doing a lot of PT. So where I am right now is just to give you a quick update on what's going on, and then I'm going to kind of turn the hands of time back a little bit and share with you an interview I did with Cathy at Inspired Needle in Pam Coast, Florida. This is an interview that I did on my trip, and I just haven't gotten around to editing it until today. So that's coming your way. Of course, our big news is, depending on when you're watching this, the registration is about to open or has opened or has been opened for the 2025 FlossTube at Sea cruise. Now, we can call this the second annual because this is the cruise that I did with Michelle Bendy and Jan Hicks back in January. And of course, if you watched our promo video, you know that Michelle's coming back, and the gals from Sunshine Stitchers are going to be joining us, and that's EJ and Sheila. So they're going to be the co-hosts for 2025. And we sure are going to miss Jan. I know she's got a lot of busy months and activities ahead of her. She and her husband are just delightful, and I enjoyed my time with them. And I just know that there are big things on their horizon. So we'll all be watching out for that. But in the meantime, if this is new news for you, the 2025 FlossTube at Sea cruise will be sailing out of Fort Lauderdale again. And the dates are January 25th to February 1st. So if you have interest in joining us on this cruise, I suggest that you watch that promo video, because that gives you an overview of the cruise. And then, of course, the details are also on the Stitchers Escapes website. And I'll put links to all that in the episode description for today. So in the next week or so, I'm going to be busy cutting fabric for some kits and making floss packs and doing all those kind of fun things. And I've got some good creative things on the drawing board that I'm working on as well. So that's kind of like what my next week is going to look like. So my lazy days are over. There is no more time to just lay around and read books. It's time for me to get back to work. So now I'm going to turn back the hands of time and show you an interview that I did with Cathy at Inspired Needle. At this point, it's probably been a month ago. And it was a real treat for me. It was my first visit to that shop. It was wonderful. And if you're ever in that area, and it's right off 95, so if you're just driving on down along the coast of Florida, you need to stop in. it was a treat for me because it's always fun to see a shop that has this kind of energy and excitement about it. But I was also able to meet up with a stitcher who has taken several of my classes. David brought along several projects that he is stitching or has stitched that are among my designs, including Jane Hattersley, which is a big girl, and he's done a beautiful job with this particular project. And he brought along the other big sampler in my collection, and that's Janet Irving. And we spent some time looking at the colors of floss in this particular one to help him trade out one or two that were just not working with the ground cloth that he had chosen. But it's just going to be a beautiful sampler when it's done. It was great to spend time in a shop that has this sort of high energy level. It was wonderful to meet some of Cathy's customers who are new to me and to be able to reconnect with an old friend. Anyway, at this point, I will just go back in time and introduce you to Cathy at Inspired Needle. Thanks for creating such a beautiful day for us. I mean, the weather.
I specially ordered it.
Yeah, the weather is just absolutely perfect.
Yes, it is. It's a gorgeous day.
Now, of course, those of you who watch me often know that I just finished a cruise, a FlossTube cruise. On my way home, I said I have got to stop at Inspired Needle, so here we are.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Well, even when you were in the Chicago area, I knew about your shop and I always wanted to go and just never made it that far. So now you're on my way home, which is perfect. So let's start with that. Huge relocation for you to go from the Chicago area to Pam Coast.
I would never wish that on my worst enemy. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done.
Well, anybody who's ever moved, just households, is a challenge. And to move shops and to do them concurrently, it's just, just huge. Tell me a little bit about your shop. I've only been here for a few minutes and already I'm just so impressed with your thread assortment and your fabric assortment is incredible.
Thank you.
So, do you feel like you have a specialty or?
I'm still kind of treading water right now because the clientele is so different. I've noticed that in Chicago I used to sell a lot of 36 and 40 count fabrics and not so much here. I sell, a lot of Ada, 14, 16, 18, 28 and 32. That seems to be the niche here so far.
Yeah. And of course, and that's good customer service when you kind of figure out who your customers are and can provide for them, what they want, what they need. Great variety of charts.
Thank you.
And
I was telling Mindy earlier too how many boxes, because I went from 700 square feet to 1,500 square feet when I expanded, and now I'm back down to 700 square feet, and it's like, what do you do with all this stuff, Yeah. So I have boxes and boxes and storage.
Right. But you can take all those years of experience and put them to work, figuring out, how to get the most you can in your square footage, and evidently you did. And great models. But all the way up to the ceiling, you just have to keep looking up. It's great models.
Vertical.
Even hanging from the ceiling. What are your plans for the shop? Anything coming up that we need to?
I would like to get started again, and it seems like when I'm ready to do it, something comes up to get a regular stitch night going.
Yes.
A Friday night, or even during the week. I was considering, because I'm closed Monday, Tuesday, and I was thinking maybe even a Tuesday evening. I used to be open Tuesday, but maybe not the shop open, but maybe open and have a couple hours where people can come and sit and stitch.
And again, thinking about your clientele here being different, maybe an afternoon. I know a lot of people don't want to drive at night. And,
that's a good thing.
So you'll find the sweet spot, and that's what's really great. Now, what a lot of people may not know is Cathy is also the genius behind Galleria. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, it's coming up.
That's been going on for a number of years.
I want to say this is my 10th year or 11th year. I'm
10 or 11. I mean, that's great. So
this year is September 12th through 14th.
Okay.
And I'm working on dates already for 2025. We've had a few conflicts. I depend on, you know, as being like a shop there. The rest of them are designers. I try to have another shop in Lindy from Silver Needle has been a big help.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
she's been coming all these years. And so I don't know if it's due to, you know, COVID cancellations. And so all these trips are coming up for her. And she's, you know, we're working with her schedule, Rosewood Manor, you know.
Right.
Some people who have like a lot of things going on, and I need to be mindful of their schedules too.
Right. And then the hotel's availability. So,
yes. Yeah.
Having done a little event planning myself, I can imagine there's a lot of moving parts, and,
Right.
and you have to figure out, you know, what's going to work for everybody. But that's classes as well as shopping.
Classes, yes.
Yeah, fantastic.
About event, I mean, you used to do Spirit of Cross Stitch, so
Yeah.
that was like, I'm sure Galleria is nothing compared. I only was to, I think the very last Spirit. I can't even remember where it was, in Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was massive.
Yeah.
I'm just like a little small
Yeah.
cog on the
like,
wheel.
It's like when I tell people about it now who have never been, they think that I'm making it up.
No, you're not.
But
making
I
it
mean,
up.
our smallest attendance was 3,400.
Oh yeah.
And the average was more like 6,000 or 7,000 cross stitchers who just came together.
It might have been the last 2 years. It was definitely in Iowa, and there was, I don't know, I think there was a bridge or something, or I'm getting it confused with Kentucky.
No, yeah. The convention center and the
Yeah.
and the hotels are connected by like the third or fourth story up.
Right,
They would
those
have bridges
walkways.
because I mean their winters can be kind of brutal. So
Right.
all those office buildings are connected to each other with
Yeah.
over the street
That
sort
was-
of pedestrian bridges.
It was like my favorite thing ever,
Yeah.
going to Spirit of Cross Stitch.
And one of the things I loved about the one in Iowa and in Des Moines was they had a great restaurant that specialized in soup. And it was the first time I ever had one of those soup, like the bread bowls
Oh, okay.
that are gouged out and the soup.
Right.
Oh my God, I can still taste it. But yeah, that was great. And I mean, I was so happy that other, you know, other events have popped up. Because that's the thing that I hear constantly from people is they love the fact that cross stitch has this community, this sense of community, and so many people stitch alone, and they love having a stitch night in a local needlework
A
store,
place to go.
or going to a retreat, or taking classes. It's fun to be with kindred spirits. So
Yeah, and I'd say I can't think of any friends that I have that were pre-stitching. You know, I have my friends and they're all stitchers.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so even here, you know, and you just get to know people, and that's how I know this area, because I had a customer who lives in Jacksonville, and she, when I was still in Illinois, and she called me and she's like, oh, you know, placing her order, and I says, oh, I'm going to be out by you next week. I'm going to see my mother-in-law. And she's like, well, where? And I said, Palm Coast. I had no idea Palm Coast was like the next city. Well, it's Palm Coast, St. Augustine, and then Jacksonville, but I didn't know they were so close.
Yeah.
So we met. I joined her EGA chapter. I mean, we've been friends ever since.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So.
What do you like to stitch?
I'm a sampler gal. Samplers or smalls. I like to put stuff together. And like fussy stuff. I'm trying to think who... like I look back, I used to do a lot of EGA events, and I look back and like Lauren Sauer, and I can't remember who did this beaded bag, but it was all beaded, and I look at it now. I mean, this was back in my early stitching, and you beaded it. It was no stitching. It was just all beads.
Wow.
And then you put it together, and I lined it, and I drawstring, and I look at it, and I'm like blown away that I did it. I'm like, I don't know how I did it, but I did it.
Yeah.
And, you know, just, well, like meeting other stitchers, and they just kind of help you, and they encourage you. And I think that's the the community, the coming together with other stitchers, and because that's how I learned how to put together an ornament for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting there, we probably at Spirit Across Stitch and putting it together.
There are a lot of shop owners and designers I come across now that entered those professions after coming to Spirit Across Stitch, and it kind of makes me feel like a godmother a little bit. Like, oh wow, that we had something to do with that beginning.
Little fledgling, little birdies go.
Yeah, right. So, do you offer any finishing services here yet?
I haven't found someone. I don't have the time to do it. I wish,
Right.
and I always said,
anybody listening who likes to make things,
get a hold of me. I need a finisher.
yeah. Every shop needs a good finisher. That's for sure.
But I thought if I ever closed my shop, not that I have any intentions, but if I ever did, that might be something I would go into.
Yeah.
I love to fuss with all that stuff.
Oh, that's good.
I just don't have sometimes the creativity. I look at some of these finishes, I'm like, wow, I wish I would have thought of that, you know?
Right. But I think sometimes with finishing, you kind of get inspired by the stuff around you. Like I think the challenge as a finisher, you have to have a lot of stuff. You have to have, like we talk about cross-stitch stitch, but when you are doing finishing, you have to have ribbons and laces and doodads and little clusters of berries and just, you know, you don't really know what you're going to do until you see this stuff in front of you. I guess it's like being a creative cook. You look in your pantry, you see what you've got, you say, oh, well, this would go with this and this would go with this. And, and you just throw it together. But I think that finishing is, I mean, not to cut into the business of finishers by any stretch of the imagination, but I think people, if they were taught how to finish, are a lot more adept at it than they think that they would be.
Oh, really? Yes.
Because I kind of feel like that if you do counted cross stitch, you're already attuned to detail. You're paying attention to tiny little stitches. And that's part of the skill set of being a good finisher, is just paying attention to detail, taking care, taking your time.
And I think having the right tools too.
Yes.
If you have your, you know, your little pokey thing, you know, a simple chopstick can do wonders and get in those corners and make the corners nice and crisp. And
and of course there are a lot of people who do finishing as far as like making ornaments and stand-ups and flat folds, and then there are people who do the sewing part that might be good at, say, making a pillow, and then of course there's the whole thing of framing, of lacing or pinning or and getting something ready for the framer.
Yeah, and I think that opens up a whole new world too. If you can finish and, you know, lace your own piece, get it, you know, at least even just mount it and then maybe take it to the framer. That's what I used to do. I would lace it and then take it to the framer and have them put it all together. But that even saves a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm a pin rather than lace girl. But I also, I mean, one of the nightmares you see on social media is people will post that they took something in the framer and it's not centered, or you know, just some careless, it's not in the frame straight or whatever. And again, if you can pay attention to the detail to do counter cross stitch, then you can learn to mount it, and then you save money, you save time, and you get it exactly the way you want it.
Right.
So yeah, that's to me has always been a skill set that I think I'd like to see cross stitches at least try it. You know, you really don't know whether or not you can do it until you try it.
Yeah, I started back in Illinois, and I want to start it up here too. We would get together on a Sunday and just have a Sunday finishing day, and just in the afternoon, and just having other people around you with, and you can talk about, well, what do you think? How do you think this trim looks? Should I use the chenille? Should I use the rickrack? And the things we came up with are just yeah, and that's a fun thing, and I think then people are not so intimidated when they're sitting with other stitchers, and it's like, oh, well, look, she can do it. And I've had people call me from my FlossTubes, because I used to do little FlossTube videos of some of those finishing days. Oh, I want to do what so-and-so's doing. Can I buy that, whatever that series was, you know? And because they see how easy it is, and you don't have to put everything in a frame and hang it on the wall. You
Right.
can do all kinds, like you said, stand-ups or pillows or whatever.
Right. And speaking about easy things, I forgot to set my phone to do not disturb, and I forgot to set it so it won't go to sleep. So I'm hoping we're still recording. Let me check. We are.
Okay, good.
All right. I'm not going to touch it then.
Well, I meant to keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be
Yeah.
something if we sat here for all this time and then.
Well, I can tell you some nightmares of.
Oh.
Once I went through like an entire interview, and realized my phone had gone to sleep and nothing was recorded. And then we're like trying to remember all the things we talked about.
To try to recreate the whole thing.
Right. I was going to ask you something else important. So going back to your days of Inspired Needle in the Chicago area, and I keep saying that because I can't remember exactly what town it was in.
It was in Lamont,
There you go.
Illinois.
How long have you been in the shop business, counting both locations?
15 years.
Okay, so in those 15 years, what changes have you seen?
Probably people aren't so, people will say, oh, I'm a monogamous.
Monogamous stitcher.
Thank you. They're not. They're just, it's like the new thing comes out. They're just crazy. I wish I would have been around in Charlotte times. For those that don't know, the Charlotte market it wasn't a cash and carry. It was you went and ordered.
Right.
And then when you would come back to the shop and you'd have these big market things, it's not that special anticipation because all the pictures are put out there. Everyone knows ahead of time. But it's still the excitement of, oh, here it is. I finally get this, pattern in my hand. But I'd say that people are building up a stash now, more so than they used to.
Yeah, I was talking about this with another longtime stitcher that's been stitching since the 80s, and it's like before you were apologetic if you were stitching two things at once. And I used to encourage people, like if you were doing a big sampler, like Janet Irving, which was my very first publication and is still out there, that if you were stitching something like that, to also every once in a while do a small ornament or something. Mm-hmm. We didn't even call them smalls then, like that's a whole new term. And so I would encourage them to kind of break up and do something small every once in a while so they wouldn't get bored with it. And now it's like, people are doing dozens and dozens of projects at a time.
And even coming here, what I've noticed is I'll look at something, and like I said, I have all this storage with all these older patterns, but once in a while I'll pull some out and I'll put them up there because I think they're still timeless and they're beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I'm amazed at how many people are buying older patterns, and probably because the clientele here maybe had never seen it before.
Right.
Maybe I have a different type of inventory than some of the other shops around. So I think people, maybe they're a little more impatient because everything is so, how do you want it, timely, I want it now, I want that is a little bit of a challenge for me.
Yeah, well, the whole Amazon Prime,
yes.
You order it and you're expecting it tomorrow.
Right.
And back in the day, if you got something in 3 or 4 weeks, you were thrilled.
Oh, yeah.
And so, there's this immediacy and the instant gratification that is different. And social media is a huge difference than back when I started designing. And even, like you say, 15 years ago. Yeah, we couldn't
even email the shop for what we wanted. We had to actually call them.
Right.
What's the telephone? Yeah. The rotary.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was explaining to the grandkids about, I was using a telephone before we had area codes. And I remember when we called our grandmother, when we lived in Pennsylvania, and calling my grandmother in Virginia, you had to call the operator. And she's like, what century are you talking about?
They don't know.
Things
they have no idea. Those were the good times.
Yeah. But the good news is that I can take my cell phone and go around the shop and take pictures and share them with everybody, no matter where they are.
Yeah. So I guess it's like a catch-22. It's good and I won't say it's bad. It's just different because you don't have to wait those 3 weeks. If you want it, yes, you can get it. You can call up or email a shop or place an order online, whoever. And something you saw, you don't have to pray that you won't forget about it. You know, it's always right there, and you can look it up and find it.
Yeah. Well, and your shop location is fantastic. You're right off of 95. So anybody making that trek up and down the Florida coast can stop here at Inspired Needle.
2 stoplights. Exit, make a right, go to the next stoplight, make a right, and boom, you're here.
Right. And then there's little shopping centers all around as far as grabbing a place for lunch or dinner or whatever. So.
Starbucks, a lot of Stitchers want the Starbucks right here.
Yeah, Starbucks and Stitching, they both start with S's, so that's a good thing. So.
Yeah.
You know, when we were talking about changes in the industry, again, back when I started designing, like the 80s was the transition from selling photocopies of our designs to actually having a printed publication. That was like the big transition. And now, of course, with PDFs and you know, home printers and whatnot, that's made a huge change. So the other thing too that I think has been a great change is the wide spectrum of design styles. There truly is something for everyone, from the very traditional to the very non-traditional, and all kinds of color schemes, and you know, there's just that part I think is absolutely marvelous.
And something for like those big mirabilias that, to me, I have a friend from back home who she stitched one for every niece or nephew. They got one of those angels. And back in the day, I don't know if you remember Rock Home Gardens.
Yeah.
We used to go, and it was like a national count across stitch show, and they would have actually judging, and they would assign ribbons, and it was like a county fair, but on a grander scale, much larger.
I was there for a couple of years. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I saw you there. I don't know.
Yeah,
but so we would go and see all these beautiful. There was a lot of that stuff, and these, you know. But I could never do anything like that. But you start with a little sampler. You know, Mary Vandenberg. You know, I took her classes in Rock Home Gardens, and start with a little sampler, and then you could go bigger. And I think for me that was part of it, the satisfaction of you would finish a band at a time, or you'd have not C.A. Wells, but Cynthia Zittel from the Drawn Thread. I loved doing her stuff too, and it was always the
band samplers.
Sampler, finish a little bit at a time. That's how I learned how to do specialty stitches, because it wasn't so hard, you know. So I think, yeah, you can try it. And I didn't, in the beginning, everyone I think starts out like with the Lizzie Kate kind of, you know, cutesy. There's a lot of cute tiny modernist, and now there's Primrose Cottage needle arts, and so just a whole gamut.
Right. Well, now that we have talked about all these interesting things, I'm going to get to go shop a little bit. And if we think of anything that we need to add, I will just edit it in. But it's just so great to be here. Thanks for hosting me today.
Sure. Thank you for coming.
Between now and the next time I see you, stitch happy and stay safe.